A broken stand, wonder of you. What's up everyone, it's your lawyer, Godot. People in the community have been talking a lot about Tooru and his stand, Wonder of You, who is also a rock human impersonating a head doctor, Satoru Akefu, and something much more, as describing Wonder of You as some sort of force just wouldn't do him justice. And people in the JoJo Power Scaling community put Wonder of You up against GR, Touch Like 4, hell even the World Over Heaven, because Wonder of You scaling is pretty nuts. Even X-Force made a video on how cracked this motherfucker is. So today I'm going to explain and prove why Wonder of You is not only one of the most broken stands, but also the second strongest stand in JoJo's objectively. Before I continue, if you haven't, make sure to like and subscribe with notifications on, as a staggering 98% of you haven't. Let's get this channel to 50k subs. Alright, on to the video. Wonder of You's ability is pretty simple, but insanely deadly. A short way of explaining it is that the more you pursue Tooru, or Wonder of You, aka the head doctor, the more likely it is that you'll be torn apart and die. But a more detailed explanation of the ability is that anyone who pursues or has any intent of pursuit against Wonder of You or Tooru will be struck down by calamity. Calamity is basically bad luck, and if you're in the flow of calamity, no matter what actions you take or just what you do, the result is a harmful calamity against you. The damage of these calamities are severe and unnatural because every calamity has calamity energy behind them. Go figure. Increasing the damage of, let's say, raindrops that go through your body and a leaf falling from a tree to cut your finger off, right? For example. Calamities can come from anything and everywhere, as the whole universe is against you, and these attacks cannot be perceived until they collide with the victim. Calamity will make you run into walls, objects, and even loop you by messing with your perception. It'll make you get hit by a car, make you hurt yourself unknowingly, give you a biological curse, virus that'll kill you, make medicine defective to kill you, a piece of an airplane door will fly at you, etc. It's basically Final Destination, but on crack. There's even a kill chain or kill order. Anything that can happen will happen. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Similar to Murphy's Law. But what counts as pursuit against Tooru and Wonder of You, you may ask? Well, here's a long list of what counts as pursuit against them. Josuke and friends following Wonder of You with no negative intent, physically trying to find out Wonder of You or Tooru's identity, thinking about seeing Wonder of You or Tooru's face and identity, will to pursue generally, which is pretty nuts, and in any such action, no matter how trivial the action is, looking at Wonder of You or Tooru, because it's just immediate death if you look at them, holding an intention to defeat Wonder of You or Tooru, attacking Wonder of You and Tooru unknowingly, of their name or identity, touching anything Wonder of You or Tooru has touched, which is another crazy thing. What? And that's pretty much it. Only one character in the series was able to remove all these intentions from themselves, and that is Jobin's wife. But even then, she shortly died after with calamity because of the equivalent exchange. And if you pull a Josuke and decide to mentally pursue Wonder of You while not moving at all, inviting calamity, Wonder of You would show up and just make you move, committing an action that results in calamity by using rock insects to just attack you. Speaking about Wonder of You showing up, bro is everywhere in part 8, as wherever the pursuer is, he'll be there, as he's an auto tracking energy that also just automatically attacks endlessly regardless of whether Wonder of You is physically present or not. So Wonder of You's range is likely infinite given it being an auto tracking energy. Also, Wonder of You can be at two places at once, like the hospital and the Higashikata household, and can most likely be in even more places at once, just referencing the jojolion chapter covers. Multiple calamities can happen at once, making this stand so frustratingly broken and hard to deal with. But that's not all, as you're probably wondering that if an opponent is faster than the calamities, then they should be able to just speed blitz Wonder of You, right? Wrong. The speed of the calamities literally don't matter, as the automatic activation of them isn't by Wonder of You. It's by you, the pursuer, just thinking or looking at Tooru or Wonder of You. And because you had that thought before you moved on to whatever action you were gonna take against Wonder of You or Tooru, a calamity is already fated to intercept you regardless. Because the calamity is already there in your way, and it'll only appear physically once you make the physical action of pursuit. Whether the calamity is slow or fast, or just stationary, you'll run into it or be stopped before reaching the stand, which is busted. The only type of speed that could get around that is inaccessible speed with Software Go Beyond, which I'll explain later in the video. Finally, another scary thing about calamities is that the attacks and activations of them aren't controllable by Tooru and Wonder of You at all, and can't be stopped once in motion. And Tooru and Wonder of You don't know what calamity will occur, as while calamity is an ability that protects them from pursuers, it's something more external, if that makes any sense. A force of nature. Quick bonus, Wonder of You quickly caused the death of Lucy Steele due to her looking at Tooru and wanting to pursue the fruit Tooru has. And when Lucy was returned back to America, World War II started. All the calamity preventing Lucy from pursuing Tooru in Wonderview. Wild stuff, man. Paths, flow, resolve, coincidences/accidents in JoJo are all interchangeable with fate. A force of nature that sets up a sequence or chain or flow of events with a destined conclusion, to put it simply. Explained and showcased by Killer Queen Bites the Dust, Poochie's win against Weather Report, and Gyro's victory against Wicked Pico. Paths and resolve being heavily talked about and showcased by Journal and Jobin, which results in their destined victory. Coincidences being interchangeable with flow, as talked about and showcased by Heia's chain of events that results in only good luck for its user. And once again, these coincidences within flow are fated, as talked about and showcased by Poochie with Ungalo and Weather Report. Coincidences and accidents are blatantly interchangeable by Jobin and Rai's father, like when he died in the flow of calamity. What makes calamities what they are is how you and everyone interacts with society in general. Society in JoJo is just based on what each individual person would have happen to them as a result of their specific situation and their interaction with the world. An example by Jobin is, quote, "There are situations where if you'd gotten somewhere a second sooner, you might have been in an accident or avoided an accident. Things where the result is good or bad." Basically, what he's saying here is that the cause of whatever you do, like going to work, the effect or result is either good or bad. You're on time or you're late. Jobin reveals that what exists around everyone that makes these situations and interactions with society, or at least what he believes dismissing good and bad luck, is strength and weakness. But it's important not to take his dismissal of good and bad luck as fact, as he gave examples earlier of just like simple dualities of good and bad. And there's just other examples to experience these dualities as explained by Valentine. Jobin's view is that strength is good and weakness is bad. How you perceive things is also an interaction with society. It's the cause of your decisions. Strength to Jobin is the righteous path that will lead to a fated victory. The events within the path he partakes in are the cause, and results or effect of this path is victory, which is good. But even following that righteous path walked by a saint who makes no mistakes, it's unavoidable that bad things will occur during the path, no matter how small. That is calamity, the unavoidable. You can be fated to win going down whatever path you've chosen, or a force is chosen for you, and something negative like you getting hurt in the path to victory will forcibly derail you into and only a path of calamity when facing Tooru in Wonderview. Every action or cause you take in this path or flow due to pursuing Tooru in Wonderview undeniably results in one thing: calamity. Even Wonderview says that fate is particularly unlucky for whoever pursues, explaining and proving this to his current pursuer. No good things will happen to you in this flow unless the gods in JoJo bestow upon you a miracle, like with Go Beyond. Basically, calamity can change your fate into a new fate of calamity, a fate manipulation that counters other fate manipulation. Now on to how Wonderview and calamities operate in specific. The flow of calamity is the flow of reason. Reason being the cause or the why, when, and how events happen to reach a fated conclusion, as showcased by various calamities, and the flow of reason is an interconnected chain of logic the world follows under. Worlds in JoJo, or at least the context of JoJo, when used to describe the effect, like a space-time ability or a parallel dimension ability, for example, would like mean universe. Two good examples is Time Stop stopping Made in Heaven. Time Stop is stated to affect the world, stated in the JoJo guidebook, as well as in part 3. And not only was Made in Heaven accelerating the entire universe to infinity, but Time Stop stopped it completely. And the author even states himself that in an interview, time abilities in JoJo are extremely powerful, and their range can go all the way out into outer space in reference to Time Stop. Last example is tied with Made in Heaven and D4C, stating and showing that space-time continuums and parallel dimensions are different universes in JoJo, often referred to as like new worlds, parallel worlds, or the new world, which should mean that calamity operates on a universal scale as a lowball. As for the flow of reason, the interconnected chain of logic of the universe, as it's also setting up events in a progressive timeline and giving out conclusions that will happen once the events have physically progressed there. But if you're still skeptical of calamity, aka Wonderview, being at least universal in power / hacks, I have a professional translation of the scan by my good old pal Rise. Go check him out on Twitter. Anyways, the scan for Wonderview says, the concept / law of calamity. Even if the user has disappeared / died, will the doctor still exist? Wonderview is a law of calamity that will never go away from the world, which is just an ability that Tooru used for its own sake. Wonderview being an actual concept and law of the universe, but in a negative way. That being calamity. The erasure of calamity isn't the erasure of reason and logic. It's simply the erasure of misfortune as an ability or force over the universe. And how fitting that in Part 9 our protagonist Jodio, who some including myself hypothesized to be the Lucky Joestar, will by the end of his own story become filthy rich, an outcome of good fortune that contrasts the unlucky and calamitous tone that casts a shadow over Part 8. But in conclusion, what we talked about earlier gives Wonder View law manipulation. Wonder View is also a type 2 abstraction or idea that is the embodiment of fundamental aspect or abstract concept, right? And is able to regenerate as long as the concept itself continues to exist. Destroying the abstraction is required to permanently kill those characters, but they can still be affected without directly altering it. As well as what was described about society in JoJo would make Wonder View not only have conceptual manipulation, involving the manipulation of universal concepts, and not the universe directly, but this would also make him a lesser realist concept, which I will not dive into for the sake of this video. Oh, and since Wonder View is an abstract being, this would make him non-corporeal, which we've seen throughout jojolion, like him walking through pillars, becoming almost like a shadow or reflection on the wall, etc. Once again, go figure. Finally, since Wonder View is the concept / law of calamity, that by itself should make Wonder View just naturally universal in scale due to the manipulation of calamity as a concept / law against any pursuers. Now, for the mid-ball, there's two reasons for Wonder View / calamity to be Multiversal Plus and power / hacks. By the way, Multiversal Plus is basically an infinite amount of universes. The reasons for Wonder View being able to reach this tier are pretty easy to understand. The first is that since Wonder View is the universal like concept / law of calamity, he should exist in some way in every JoJo universe, since calamity is misfortune, aka bad luck, and good and bad luck should exist in every JoJo universe, as it's just a part of one big duality like that every universe just operates under. Imagine if Valentine were to pursue Wonder View, then go into an alternate universe where tooru doesn't exist and Wonder View is nowhere in sight, but Valentine would still want to pursue Wonder View, thus Valentine would be attacked by calamity in this alternate universe too, since calamity exists in every universe. The second reason for Wonder View / calamity to be Multiversal Plus is an author statement by Araki himself, saying in response to putting fictional characters against each other and applying similar questions in regards to JoJo as a whole, stating, even when writing JoJo, this is a topic I cannot avoid. Who is the strongest villain? What is strength? And what is peak fortune? Keep in mind that when Araki is asking these questions, he's asking them as a general reference to the entire series he's been writing, parts 1 to 8 at the time this statement was made, which means he's referring to all the villains of the series, including the main ones, of course, when he questions who's the strongest. With strength, that is a direct reference to Jobin with the right path. Peak fortune is a indirect reference to D4C Love Train, as that's the only thing D4C Love Train is. Good fortune, and it only brings good fortunes to itself in a flow, right? With anything negative being redirected somewhere else, leaving once again only good fortune. Peak and total fortune, if you will. D4C Love Train being a villain, and peak fortune that calamity, aka Wonder View, scales above. This is nuts because D4C Love Train walls house an infinite amount of dimensions. Space-time continuums and parallel dimensions are just different universes in JoJo, often referred to as new worlds, which Valentine refers to his as. The amount of dimensions / universes that exist in Part 7 are limitless / infinite. D4C Love Train even has guidebook statements of transcending dimensions, even mathematically. Obviously, the mathematical statement in the context of Part 7 just refers to the third dimension and the infinite amount of universes in it. This will all make Wonder View casually Multiversal Plus via scaling above this. Now, Araki answers these three questions by stating, I've decided that the strongest and most terrifying adversary one can face is calamity. Calamity attacks irrationally, but is actually bound by a certain logic and will encroach on every person equally. Calamity, aka Wonder View, is the strongest villain from the series, and everything Araki has said in regards to calamity are all things applied and present in jojolion as he makes his final statement, saying it's too powerful and trying to overcome it might in and of itself be beyond hope. That is the conclusion of jojolion. When Araki says this, that calamity is too powerful, this is showcased in jojolion by Rai stating, this guy is the calamity, and he's a powerful enemy, beyond powerful. And with that being the conclusion of jojolion, it's simply in reference to Soft and Go Beyond. The statements and claims Araki makes for Wonder View here are no different than guidebook statements for other stands like Gold Experience Requiem, for example. Wonder View even parallels GER statements in regards to them having the strongest ability on their side in their respective parts. GER saying, you will never arrive at the reality that will occur. None who stand before me shall ever do so, no matter what abilities they may wield. Then Wonder View saying, the act of pursuing me is certain to become a severe disaster that is sent back to the attacker. The statement being followed by a supporting statement statement that follows, this world follows an interconnected chain of logic. Regardless of what type of stand ability you have, to overcome that and reach me is not possible. The parallel here is that due to the nature and strength of GR and WonderView's abilities, no stand ability should ever be able to overcome them, no matter what abilities they have, with Soft and with Go Beyond being the exception in WonderView's case because it goes beyond that certain logic. Another parallel between GR and WonderView is that they both have statements of having the strongest ability for their respective parts of below. GR with Jojo Go-Go, with Araki saying it has an attack power that surpasses that existing stand, so it can be said to be a perfect stand, to revert to 0, and WonderView with Araki just basically just saying Calamity is the strongest force and abilities created so far that no stand can overcome. So basically, the too long didn't listen is that Calamity, WonderView's ability, is above every stand ability from JoJo Part 3 to 8, and is the strongest force that interacts with and changes a victim's fate into Calamity heavily. The final thing to note is that WonderView is a hybrid of a stand and a person as the head doctor. Stand is a mind and soul. WonderView seemingly died mind, body, and soul when tooru died, but WonderView came back because he's the literal representation of Calamity, a concept, a law that never goes away and remains forever. This gives WonderView mid-godly regeneration, which is an ability to regenerate from complete destruction of not only their physical form, but their non-physical aspects such as their soul and mind. Basically, WonderView can come back from death on a physical, spiritual, mental level almost immediately because he's a concept that is Calamity. What makes him even more broken is that WonderView, when regenerating, will actively possess an alive person. And given that WonderView is a universal to multiversal plus force, it's hard to argue most fictional characters can resist conceptual possession by a force of this magnitude. Alright, we've finally arrived at the counter arguments against WonderView being this powerful, which mainly revolves around D4C Love Train and Tussac 4, and I might need to summarize and defend Soft and Go Beyond as well. The first is that D4C Love Train is an exact counter towards WonderView, peak fortune versus peak misfortune. While the sentiment may be true by the basic nature of D4C Love Train, the author has already stated and shown that at bare minimum, WonderView is the strongest villain he's wrote so far, which would automatically make WonderView above D4C Love Train, as Funny Valentine is a main villain that was granted a stand evolution via the corpse parts. Speaking about the corpse parts of Jesus Christ represent the multiverse's general duality of good and bad that'll have a risk of bouncing out to 0 against its user just at random with its use, which the penalty of this risk is that if you're unlucky enough to land on it, the outcome is that, let's say, an injury you're hoping to remove and throw onto someone else in the world will instead be inflicted onto someone who has equal value to you like a family member. Valentine didn't have to face these consequences when he got the corpse parts and acquired D4C Love Train, as he was simply fortunate enough to not experience the risk Johnny experienced. Now, why all this matters here is because the curse or calamity on Johnny's family for years is WonderView, as explained in the conclusion of Jojolion, with WonderView being referred to as their curse. And when WonderView is erased, the curse will be erased too, and is. Essentially, Johnny trying to remove the curse from his family is an active pursuit. Thus, Johnny suffers the calamity, being the first known character to experience the chance/risk of equivalent value being applied from the corpse parts rather than the curse just simply being shot somewhere else and that's it. The equivalent value calamity being the curse being transferred to his son. And it's not like Johnny can't use the corpse parts again to, well, just try again to test his luck, but he refuses due to the horror of seeing the curse on his son. He snaps back to his senses that he wouldn't remove and transfer this horrible curse to someone somewhere else, right? So basically, the corpse parts that made D4C Love Train just ain't shit to Calamity, aka WonderView. But there's even more. Johnny decided the only thing left to do is to transfer the curse onto himself, which he does. Not only does Johnny die to a calamity, but the curse wasn't truly removed from his family, the Higashitas, and has plagued them for a long time, which is a pivotal plot point of Part 8. And if it wasn't obvious, Tussac 4 ain't shit to Calamity either, its effects not even being able to overcome or harm WonderView. I've seen many people just make arguments that Tussac 4 should be able to harm WonderView and Calamity because Tussac 4 is the spin, and so is Go Beyond, therefore Tussac 4 should work. But the problem is that Tussac 4 and Soft and Wet Go Beyond are very different. Tussac 4 is the pinnacle of the spin, dimensionally, and while Soft and Wet Go Beyond may use some of the spin, the result is completely different, with Soft and Wet Go Beyond not only being able to just transcend Calamity, but the flow, the chain, the sequence of reason, logic, and fate going beyond logic, truly becoming non-existent, something Tussac 4 can't even hold a candle to. and it's specifically Josuke's own unique spin, not an almighty representation of it. Plus, the whole Tussac 4 being the same or better than Satomu Go Beyond argument is simply an association fallacy, which is basically an assertion of an irrelevant association that the qualities of like one thing are inherently the qualities of another. Saying, for example, the PS5 is a console, the Xbox Series X is also a console, so therefore the PS5 is the Xbox Series X and can not only perform the exact same but also have the same exclusives, deals, controllers, etc. Now obviously this isn't true. Just because they're consoles doesn't mean they're one-to-one. That's why they have different brands, exclusive performances, controllers, etc. And a similar logic would follow in regards to Satomu Go Beyond Tussac 4. The spin is Satomu Go Beyond, the spin is also Tussac 4, so therefore Satomu Go Beyond is Tussac 4, and Tussac 4 would be capable of doing anything Satomu Go Beyond can do or achieve. Now, that's a pretty good example of an unsound argument people use to just try to justify Tussac 4 being equal to or above Satomu Go Beyond while they disregard the things that make them vastly different, especially in their conclusions, which is not to completely discredit the idea that Tussac 4 could potentially replicate Satomu Go Beyond, maybe even over time, but to assert they're immediately comparable in power because their spin is just completely wrong in my opinion. Also, a good side-by-side is that while Tussac 4 and Satomu Go Beyond were fired at Calamity through a person's body, only one of them was capable of harming Wonder of You, that being Satomu Go Beyond. Finally, the last counter-argument, which is pretty much Satomu Go Beyond downplay, is the claim that Wonder of You blocked its attacks, right? This argument mainly stems from people not visually paying attention and reading the material, as Josuke actually has two spins. One he spins with his bubbles on his fingertips, and the other spin coming out of his shoulder, birthmark, actually being Go Beyond. Even Ryan points out Go Beyond is completely different from the visible spin on Josuke's fingertip. And when Go Beyond is fired, nobody can see or react to it. Tooru got hit by Go Beyond twice and didn't tank it. The attack is simply like a bullet that just negates durability, erases concepts, and doesn't have crazy destructive capability. A Multiversal Plus hacks as a low ball, 5D hacks as a mid ball given the transcendence of the multiverse like logic, reason, and causality chain of events with Fade, even erasing Wonder on the spot when shot at him. And the speed of the attack alone, since the bubble spins that fast to go beyond the causal chain of the reason and logic and Calamity, right, can at least be speculated that it has inaccessible speed, movement in 0 seconds, as time doesn't apply to the Go Beyond bubble. It spins so fast that it doesn't exist anywhere in space, time, in any universe, because they all have a chain of reason and logic and fate. And Satomu Go Beyond goes beyond all that logic that makes things work essentially. For example, if Jotaro stopped time when Go Beyond is fired, how would time stop affect an attack/ability that not only doesn't exist in the universe or space-time he's in, but also just is beyond that logic in general? The simple answer is that time stop wouldn't affect the Go Beyond bubble at all. Now, some people assert that by this logic, time stop could bypass Calamity, right? And the answer to that is no, since the difference between Calamity and time stop and Go Beyond is that time stop is a hacks Jotaro is immune to, and a hacks that canonically scales below Calamity. There's no speed feat to be had with time stop to grant inaccessible speed, while there is with Satomu Go Beyond. Alright, last thing to talk about is Wonder of You up against all the stands in the series. It's simply not even close. Wonder of You, the second strongest stand in the series behind Satomu Go Beyond, would obliterate every stand user and ability in the series without exception. No special scenario with any stand user would defeat Wonder of You, not just because of the stand's sheer powers of force of nature, but also its rule set on pursuit in general, and the type of calamities that follow that manipulate everything including people, the universe, yourself, hell, even your own stand abilities unknown against you. And trying to figure out Wonder of You from the start is a death sentence. At least the very best could be maybe a tie. That's the best case scenario for a stand user against Wonder of You. Wonder of You just does whatever it wants, while his foe that might not want to go down would pursue forever or something. Or the pursuer would just stop pursuing and never face or think about Wonder of You again. Maybe a W could be had against Tooru, but that's definitely stretching, considering that even if you were to just look at him, it's immediate death, and even harsher penalty than simply pursuing Wonder of You, with calamities just knocking into you, eventually killing you due to how hard and long you pursue. The final claim that can be made is that since Araki considers Wonder of You/Calamity to be the strongest villain in force, and that no one could defeat it, this would obviously include Maiden Heaven Pucci, because speed from massively faster than light plus to infinite speed at peak and Araki thinks Calamity would overcome him regardless. And just for fun, let's skim over D4C Love Train versus Wonder Review, equalize the stats. Many would consider this fight a stalemate since Calamity would get redirected via Love Train, and Funny Valentine simply wouldn't be able to ever reach or truly harm Wonder Review. But I think Valentine would lose pretty swiftly given that the only way he can attack is by bringing in alternate universe Valentines that would immediately get struck down by Calamity, and by making D4C partially exit half its body outside the protective walls of D4C Love Train to attack, which Valentine makes D4C do consistently, by the way, leaving himself completely vulnerable to be instantly just killed by Calamity eventually. In the instant death scenario that's highly probable here, there wouldn't be any like, oh, Valentine transfers his consciousness, because part 7 establishes that if Valentine were to die instantly, he's truly dead. He has no consciousness to transfer to anyone anymore. And there's no proof that D4C Love Train can just bring people back to life, or Valentine where you just told Johnny that he could have used Lucy Steele with the corpse to have like D4C Love Train like again to like bring the original Gyro back, but opts to just finding an alternate universe Gyro. So yeah, if Valentine instantly dies, even with D4C Love Train, he'd be cooked. Okay, with all that stuff out of the way, what kind of scaling is Wonder Review rocking? Calamity, aka Wonder Review, once again, is Universal Plus as a low ball and Multiversal Plus as a mid ball in regards to hacks and its effectiveness to negate a pursuer's / opponent's durability through attacking internal organs, energy manipulation, as Calamity described as that as well. It's everywhere and behind all its attacks naturally. Soul manipulation by possessing people, space-time manipulation, which is self-explanatory, and finally conceptual manipulation. The speed of the Calamities doesn't really matter since unless Wonder Review's opponent is immediately starting the battle off with zero intentions of general pursuit in Wonder Review's checklist, there will be a thought before the pursuer moves or commits an action which automatically sets in motion a calamity that will be fated to stop and hurt the pursuer before they reach or do anything against Wonder Review. Wonder Review is anywhere the pursuer is, right? And can be in multiple places at once. Calamities can't be stopped or controlled by tooru or Wonder Review. Calamity controls characters with fate manipulation with its own. Wonder Review can come back from death on a physical, spiritual, and mental level almost immediately because he's a concept, a law, an idea that is Calamity. Wonder Review has law manipulation, conceptual manipulation. It's an abstract concept. You get the idea. And that's just why Wonder Review is a truly broken stand. Anyways, that's all I got for y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. It's a long one. Peace.